Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. Josh, I am in a blank room. It looks like a jail cell, and it's in fact the dorm rooms at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. So that's where I am this morning.
You're gonna have to tell me how the cafeteria food is and if it's any good.
I went last night. I actually did. I'm not even joking. I'm on the meal plan here at the World Games, where disc golf is actually going to be a demonstration sport this week. They're going to be doing some, like long distance and putting contests, accuracy, various things, as disc golf is trying to make a push for the 2025 World Games in China to be included as an actual part of the competition. I've seen so many athletes from all over the world. It's kind of cool because it's like, I haven't been before. It's like, it feels like what the Olympics feels like probably. It's like people from every country, and there's giant dudes who are like sumo wrestlers. And then there's like billiards players, like old like dudes with like a big gut. It looked like they smoke a lot of cigarettes, and they're just like on the billiards team for France. I love it. So it's been a lot of fun. The cafeteria food is acceptable. That's how I would describe it.
Good. That's good to hear. So I've got a funny story for you from this weekend.
Okay.
I had my wife's family reunion. They do it every year. Her mom has I think 6 siblings who all have 4 or 5 kids each. So they do this every year, and it's 50 plus people every year at these family reunions. And this year, I've got a lot on my plate right now between work and city council, and so I've been really busy. And I was like, man, this year's going to be hard. I would rather have the weekend to get some work done, but I know I need to go. So I was kind of bemoaning it a little bit. And let's just say karma's a real thing. So 9 a.m. on Saturday, I get the car packed up. My wife had ridden up with another family member. So she'd been up there since Thursday afternoon. And Saturday morning, I'm packing up, and I get on the freeway, and I head out, and then about 30 seconds on the freeway, I hit something. I don't know what. Blow out the sidewall on one of my tires.
Whoa.
I have to pull over, change the tire onto the donut, turn around, get back to the tire shop, I end up getting there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 10.
That's brutal.
Karma gets you, man.
Does.
It's a thing.
You got to look out. You got to be careful.
Every time. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's time for us to dig into some Idlewild action from the weekend. And we're also going to be doing a segment, who's trending in the right direction and in the wrong direction, because we're kind of at this little inflection point in the season where some people headed over to Europe. Everybody's going to get a little bit of a mental reset, because if you're not going to Europe, there's not a tournament for 3 weeks. And so this is the chance for everybody to kind of catch their breath, including us, and then get ready for the final push of the season. I was just looking at the calendar. There's not that many tournaments left. There's just not. There's 8 Elite Series plus the Tour Championship. And so blink of an eye, we're going to be into the Disc Golf Pro Tour postseason at GMC and MVP. So, of course, we have Worlds before that. And so, anyway, it's a chance for us to kind of take a look at who's been playing well lately and who's struggling and what could that mean for later in the year. But let's begin with Idlewild. Isaac Robinson becomes the first new Elite Series winner in MPO as he takes down Chris Dickerson by 4 strokes. And those two guys separated so far from the rest of the pack that no one else was really even in contention going down the back 9. Incredible performance from Isaac Robinson. Almost perfect on the putting green, 50% from circle 2, did not miss from circle 1 all weekend. Had the hot round twice, Josh, twice. And really just showed off a little bit higher level of what we've been seeing from him, which is excellent disc golf that has him rated up in the 1040s.
I would not be surprised, especially because of how little disc golf he's played over the past couple of years while he's in school. I think that he's going to be one to watch in terms of ratings to see him accelerate very quickly, given just that he doesn't have a large number of rounds that are going to take him time to work through in order to get to that 1040 rating. There's a very real possibility. What's he rated right now? Was it 10? I know it's 10.
Well, I guess I said 1040s, but I lied because he's 1036.
1036. But my point, I think what you were saying though is he really is averaging and playing golf like a 1040 player, and kind of what we expect out of a 1040 player. I would not be surprised to see him reaching 1040 within a couple of tournaments after we're back from Europe. Give him 3 or 4 events. I think he very easily could be in the 1040s by the end of that. I like his chances to get up and be in the top 8, top 6 even in terms of rating, and that's a special place to be. There are a lot of 1030 guys who have up and down seasons. You've got Kevin Jones. You've got plenty of guys in that range, but to be one of the 1040 guys, I think is really something that is. I mean, it's special. When you look at it, this tournament, you had Ricky at the 1050, and then Paul McBeth, Chris Dickerson, and Matty O. That's great company to be in. And I think when you are 1040 rated, I don't care what your trend is, you at least merit some conversation or thought before every single tournament.
Well, here's what I find amazing about Isaac Robinson. And it's not like I don't know his name, right? The Robinson brothers, they've been somebody you're like, oh, yeah, those kids are really good. Like, yeah, like yep. Great disc golfers. And the thing is, they were never, I mean, they pop up in the top 10 here and there, but it wasn't like they were like a name on tour, really. And you look at the way that Isaac's career has developed, right? He's in the low 1,000 rated starting in September 2017. And he basically remains there all the way through the end of 2020. And then takes a little bit of a leap, gets into the 1020s in last year, and then cracks 1030 for the first time in August of 2021, and is now at his highest ever rating at 1036, and is probably going to go up from there. So the thing is, it's like the acceleration of the performance has happened kind of like suddenly, but not so suddenly that you're like, wow, he's on the podium every week. So it felt like people weren't like identifying. He also wasn't playing that many events, how good he could be. But I think the point that I'm trying to get to here, I don't think this is like a flash in the pan type situation where like we had Conor O'Reilly win Delaware last year, right? Like this is like, no, Isaac Robinson is really good and is showing you the ability to play at kind of all facets of the game at a high level, because that's what it takes at Idlewild. I mean, you have to shot shape, you have to throw far, you have to putt. And he did all those things. And he also stared down Chris Dickerson, who was coming down the stretch at him late, and said, you know what, I'm going to birdie the last 4 holes and just pull away again. I don't care. And to me, that's the other underappreciated thing, the mental game, rock solid. How can you not be excited about his ability to continue to do this? I mean, this is not like he had some big lead that he just got to cruise on. Like, he obviously separated from a lot of the field, but Chris was not going anywhere.
And to your point about it not being a flash in the pan, I think that goes back to the point in the question of rating. When you look at a player who is in the 1020s, low 1020s, or I think Conor O'Reilly was like, was he below 1020? I think
he was like 1016, anyway, if I remember correctly.
1017 was the number in my head too, so I don't know if that's accurate, but the point being is when a player that low scores that well, and even podiums, right? You say, oh, that's an interesting person. Great weekend this weekend. And then we don't really talk about them again because we don't expect them to do
10-14. 10-14.
10-14. Oh, we were both. My gosh, that's such a low rating. Isaac's rating just shows, and put as much stock in rating as you want, but at the very least, it shows that he has the consistency and skills and has been doing it long enough that he has to be someone who, this win is not just the one-time thing. We see 10-30 guys win tournaments all the time. And I think Idlewild in particular is a tournament that demonstrates its own little microcosm of winners in the way that, we talked about it on the preview show when you look at some of the previous winners. Kyle Klein, big kind of the cementing win for his breakout year. Eagle McMahon, that was during his 3 wins in a row stretch, where I think he won, I want to say it was OTB Portland and Idlewild.
I get it mixed up.
Anyway,
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, he had three wins in a row, and I think that stretch. That was the year he won from Chase Card too, and didn't even realize he'd won. And then 2019, Kevin Jones. That was the year that we really liked Kevin Jones. He was playing really well. Paul McBeth obviously in 18, and then James Conrad this is one of his earlier wins that really started making him as a face of somebody you needed to watch regularly. And so none of those, all those players have had varying degrees of success since their Idlewild win, but they all are still relevant players. And I think that's the same thing for Isaac Robinson. He may be on a Kevin Jones trajectory or a Kyle Klein trajectory. He may be on an Eagle McMahon trajectory. I don't think it's as likely.
I'm not going to go there.
But
I'm not going to go there.
Right. I'm not either. I don't think it's nearly as likely. But I think there are 3 players with varying degrees of success, including a world champion in James Conrad. Those 3 players that just mentioned are all players who have careers that I think, and past 10 years or 5 years, maybe not, and we haven't obviously seen their careers completely played out, but all of them have careers that I think Isaac Robinson could be a very likely candidate to also have, if not a little bit more successful as well.
So, just speaking of Eagle, you saying his name made me want to check to see what his situation is. He's currently only registered for 2 events for the rest of the year: European Open and Worlds. He's not signed up for any of the other stuff. He's also, he's more or less out of the running for the Tour Championship unless he comes back and starts playing really well, because he's so far down the board right now. I'm sure he could get into one of the last spots if he was able to play the rest of the season, but just worth noting that he's not signed up for any of these DGPT events coming up.
Is he going to Europe to play?
I haven't checked in on his social media lately. I would assume he's at least going to be there. It's pretty important Discmania event.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't really see anything on his Instagram about it. So, we know he's been rehabbing the shoulder still, and man, that's a real bummer. But at the end of the day, as I said way back when this was first popping up, he should just rest. Even if it means skipping the majors, he should rest. You don't want to aggravate it playing European Open. You just don't. But anyway, we can talk more about that as we get closer to that tournament. Here's a stat for you. And we talked about this more extensively in our Rapid React show that we did for subscribers on Sunday. You got to become a subscriber. We did almost a full show about Idlewild already. It was 45 minutes. So check it out, discgolf.ultimo.com/subscribe. We talk a ton more about Isaac Robinson, Chris Dickerson, the Idlewild in general. This was the first Elite Series or major event ever that both Paul McBeth and Ricky Wysocki entered the final round outside of the top 20. Top 20.
Both finished inside the top 20.
Paul went ballistic and shot a 13 under in the final rounds. Continuing a classic tradition of getting fully out of contention and then shooting a great round. It was like Chris Dickerson a couple of years ago. Remember, he used to play
That's
bad
right.
in round 1 or something, and then he'd be like, furious charge to finish 3rd.
Yeah, I do remember that. Paul, I wonder, I mean,
There it is,
Paul
folks.
shot a
There's the yawn. He tried to hide
I know. I really did. Paul shot 1,005 rated round 2 and a 1073 round 3. I'm curious. I want to know kind of what his typical, like his tournament spread has been this season. His high to low round at every tournament, what the average of that is. If Statmando guys are listening, I'm sure I could go pull those numbers myself too. But when Statmando guys hear this,
I want to see that for every player. Just like the scoring spread between their best and worst rounds, and then you average that to see like who tends to play like very consistently the same and who tends to be a little swingier. Paul is like the ultra swing king right now. Like he's been all over the place.
Well, I can tell you, I saw included in our stat package from Statmando. There's one player who shot within 2 rating points for all 3 rounds. Wow. You know who that person was?
Chris Clements.
Nope. Joel Freeman. The only problem was it was about 15 points below his rating.
Consistently not that good.
Speaking of bad rounds, though, Gannon Burr's last round was 1,000 rated. I actually want to talk about Gannon Burr just a little bit because I think that people are going to be harder on him for his final round than they should be. I actually want to give Gannon Burr a little bit of a pass here, and here's why. Is he still a young player? And this is the caveat. Is he still a young player that needs to develop the winning mentality and the mental game that is necessary to close out big tournaments? Absolutely. You know, that is without a doubt in my mind the biggest fault of Gannon Burr right now is that his mental game in final rounds and high pressure situations is not as strong as it needs to be. That being said, I don't think that this blow up was one of the epic proportions that it seems, you know, just on the eye test. And the reason I say that is because when you watched Gannon Burr's kind of fall apart in the front 9, especially in the final round, his shots weren't that bad. Like, especially on hole 7 when he takes the triple bogey, I thought his drive was about to be golden. And it was just a touch too inside, drops OB. He then goes up. His drive is his upshot for the third shot. I mean, he's looking to save, I guess, he's looking to save par. Throws just this incredible shot uphill, tight tunnel, and just blows past the basket like 40 feet. It was an incredible shot. Putts back, hits cage, and then it rolls outside circle 2 again, outside circle 1 into luck. The woods, right? And then boom, the triple bogey, right? The 2 shots that were OB and then long that set him up for the problem were both fantastic shots that just had slight degrees of error. And at this point, I mean, he's already very frustrated, obviously.
Yeah, because he's already ice cold, right? He hasn't got a birdie in like 5 holes.
Right, exactly. And then he gets just, you know, stuck with this. And I heard him say, he says, I'm so frustrated I can't catch a break. And that was 100% true. On hole... shoot, I'm not going to be able to remember. It's the hole that everyone eagles.
So not hole 13 eagled. Is what you mean. Yeah, take that L, bro.
That was unnecessary. that was unnecessary. Anyway, I think it was hole 8. Hole 8, the eagle play is to throw the... Yeah, hole 8 looks right. Is to throw the turnover forehand if you are a right-handed backhand player. And the big high end, Chris Dickerson almost got... he got in position for the eagle off his drive, but just had a little bit of a poor upshot. So Kyle Klein goes to throw literally the exact same shot, doesn't put quite enough turn, catches the outside edge tree, and just drops down. I mean... And he still is able to scramble and save his birdie on that hole. It was a weekend that Gannon Burr obviously cracked under pressure, but it's a course that's designed to exacerbate when you do. And so I'm not particularly worried about Gannon for
I'm
moving
gonna
forward,
tell you
just based on
exactly
this result.
why you don't need to be worried about Gannon in our next segment on trending in the right and wrong direction. All right. I'm going to save it for that.
Okay.
I want to talk a little bit about FPO. Well, last thing here. Chris Dickerson rejoins the tour and finishes in second. And against other competitors, maybe finishes first. I mean, Isaac just had an incredible weekend and was able to stave him off. But, like, if anybody was worried about Chris Dickerson being rusty, don't worry about it. Like, this dude's a killer.
You know, and I even said, I actually like this about Chris Dickerson. As long as he stays competitive like this and could win any tournament, I like stretches without him where he can come back and make things interesting. It creates new storylines. It creates new excitement. Especially thanks to this tournament where it's, you know, he's gone for a month and a half, he's back, and then he's gone for another month because he's not going to Europe. I think this one cements more than anything. Anytime Chris Dickerson's there, no matter the size of the break, you have to think about him.
All right. Katrina Allen gets her first win since LVC. And it was 133 days since that win. This is a crazy stat, I think. It's the longest gap between wins in her career within the same season. That's amazing to me because it's not like Katrina's like been playing bad. It's not like Katrina, it doesn't feel like an especially long gap. But, I mean, I guess, you know, February to July ends up being a long time. You consider how much dominance she had earlier in her career when there were just not as many good FPO players competing. But still, I mean, I think talked about this in the React show, just a gritty win. I think Katrina knows how to fight in the trenches for a win. And I think that's what she did this weekend. You know, it wasn't like perfect play by any means, but, you know, she managed to get 2 of her rounds under par. And at Idlewild for FPO, that is an achievement. Like, if you go under par in every round, you're probably going to win the tournament.
Yeah. If you go under par for every round, you absolutely win the tournament because the winning score is 2 over par.
That's a big brain math right there.
It's not just a hat rack, Charlie. It's, you know, I want to bring up a point that I brought up in the subscriber bonus that I think is one that, you know, so Statmando also pointed out. I said Katrina Allen at a course that isn't as favorable or disfavorable to FPO players. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. I think Katrina Allen has a hard time coming back from what was a very lackluster round, round one. She shot a 964 in round one, which in round one, bad conditions, of course, but there were 10 other players who shot better than 964. So, you know, she's sitting in 11th place outside the top 10 at that point, and then proceeds to shoot 2 990 rated rounds. I think in a world, though, where the course is better designed for FPO women and the round ratings are a little bit higher and the numbers are a little bit further under par, I worry that in a 3-round tournament, Katrina doesn't have the time to come back, which is what we've seen all season long from her, is that she, much like Macbeth, it's been one round that holds her out of contention regularly. She's still getting up, and I think her rounds haven't been as bad as Macbeth's, and so it's kept her in, you know, maybe not contention,
she's been in the
at
mix.
Least around,
she's been in the
top 10, and right, and her finishes have been good. She hasn't had any, you know, shockingly bad finishes in
and by the way, she is currently first in the Pro Tour standings. Right.
So that says it all there. But I worry that shooting that big of a discrepancy is an issue that Katrina is not fixed, even though she won this weekend. And, you know, the Statmando guys said that, well, Haley King won with a 954, or I think that was the number, at the Women's Championship. That's a major. And that's why I think Katrina and Paul always have to be taken seriously at a major, even if every single tournament, you know, they're going to shoot one lackluster round. Because that's exactly my point. Mm-hmm. It's a 4-round tournament. 4-round, 5-round tournaments are a whole different ballgame. You can shoot a bad round and still recover. And it's why we see the players who are at the top because they're able to overcome that one bad round with 3 exceptional rounds. And then Worlds, of course, with 5 rounds, it's you're not expected to shoot 4 perfect rounds in a major. You're expected to have one lackluster round that you have to overcome. And the problem is that 3-round tournaments, it's the reason why you get so much variety in winners on MPO. Anybody can put it together for a weekend.
So let me ask
I really
you then,
believe that.
What is the reason then that you think Katrina was able to overcome round 1 here?
Yeah. Because the phrase anybody can put it together for a weekend is not true at Idlewild and FPO. That there are only a couple of women who I think can put it together and have a perfect weekend at Idlewild and FPO. And so let's give Katrina credit where credit is due. She had 2 990 rounds, which the likes of Ella Hansen and Paige Pierce and Valerie Mondahano did not. Or
she shot a 3 under front 9 in the final round. And like, it doesn't sound like a great result, but it's an incredible result. Like, that is the equivalent of like an 8 under or 9 under in MPO. I don't know. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but like, maybe call it 6 or 7 under. It's hard. Here's the problem, right? The par issue and like the course design issue for this tournament for FPO is a problem because people are like, par doesn't matter. Par doesn't matter, right? It's whatever. Just play the course, whatever. Doesn't matter. 5, 4, 3. It does matter because we all understand what a birdie means. And if you're not seeing very many of them, it gives the impression that the player is not competing well. Oh, Macbeth shot a 9. It was 9 under through 8, Macbeth. I can tell you that he is playing excellent. I see Katrina shoots 3 under through 9. And like on this course, that's really good. It's not as good as 9 under through 8. Don't get me wrong. But it's still a really good result at Idlewild and FPO because the course isn't tuned correctly. So it does matter because it makes the competition feel less interesting. It makes it feel like less like the players are not, dialed in. And like, I don't know, like if you ask players, do you feel like you played great this weekend? A lot of them are probably gonna say no. Cause when you take 6s, 7s, and 8s, it's no one wants that. But to me, the problem is structural, right? That's why US Women's was so exciting and fun, is because the women were birdieing tons. You're watching them shoot 10 under rounds. That is fun. That is exciting. Yes, the courses may be a little bit easier, but frankly, they seemed like they were pretty appropriate for the FPO field as a whole. So anyway, Idlewild, they need to like go back to the drawing board on how they set up their FPO tees, how they set the pars in some cases just needs to change probably. So that's my thoughts, Josh.
Here's my analogy for you. Imagine if you watch softball, women's softball, play on MLB fields all season long, and then at their major they play on a softball field, and you're like, wow, that course
too easy.
That field's just too small for them. Like, it's too easy. Why are they on that? The reason it's too easy is because we've been conditioned to think that FPO is scoring relatively close to par on long tracks that are just modified from MPO. That's why it's too easy, in your opinion. No one says Idlewild was too easy because Isaac Robinson shot double digits every round. Some of the top
women were complaining about the courses at US Women's.
I want to say though, and I still have not gotten this out of my head. I don't remember who said this, but someone said to us during, when was it? I don't remember. But someone said to us, is the reason of Paige Pierce's dominance that the FPO game has never been properly designed around their skill set, and so it over exaggerates the importance of distance throwers? And is that why, Paige, Katrina, look at your dominant players for the past decade. They have an outsized advantage in distance. And the FPO courses have always benefited from that, right? More so than MPO. Imagine if every MPO track was 25% longer right now, right? Double G, Eagle, Like we'd be talking about him every weekend. And I think that's true in FPO. So of course Paige is going to complain. If Paige is able to,
I get it.
Right?
Yes, everybody always.
I'm not going to tell you a Paige would be washed.
I was just wanted to pump the brakes today if it was shorter. Paige is one of has one of the greatest forms in all of disc golf. She's an incredible player. Yes, she has a couple of weaknesses in her game, as does everybody. But I think she's proven that she can win on short courses. She's proven that she can win on birdie or die courses.
Agreed.
She's proven that she can win anywhere. I mean, I don't think things would change dramatically. But I do get the point. I do think that's an influence.
Yes.
I think if more tournaments were played on the kinds of courses we saw at Token and Elver for U.S. Women's, we would probably see a higher diversity of winners, because I think that it does open the door. But, again, you look at the top of the leaderboard at U.S. Women's, and it's the players who are finishing at the top of the leaderboard every week. Haley King, Valerie Mondahano, Owen Scoggins.
And that's true.
It's not like you're still suddenly going to have random 9-10 rated player come and win the tournament.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's a demonstration of the advancing skill level of FPO. Right, more players are throwing further, and it's not just Paige, Katrina, Jen Allen, which is about 3 years ago.
When we talked about long throwers,
that's who
it's true.
It was those three. Right, and that's now you can include Marie Oliva, Ella Hansen, Holland Hanley,
Natalie Ryan.
Natalie Ryan. There are plenty of players that you can include in much further throwing players now. But the other point I wanted to make in terms of your question about par, I don't think it's just about being able to see birdies and understand what birdie mean. The problem is that the scoring scale does not slide equally over, right? So it's not that you have a similar MPO scoring distribution that just everyone drops 5 strokes and then it slides directly over and is perfectly correlated with FPO. The problem whenever there's a course like this that isn't designed around FPO is that the scoring spread compacts and then slides over. So 3 under is the hot round, but the problem is that the top 10, 15 rounds are all within 8 strokes of each other. And you have very little scoring distribution, I feel, in a proper manner that spreads out and allows for players to separate. And so you just compress it really hard. And there's some MPO tracks that don't, but that's a common feature of courses where the fact that a 3 under is a 1,000 rated round from Missy, and then even is not even 990, I believe. I'll check the exact number of what the even round from Jessica Weiss was. So Jessica Weiss is, of course, the PDGA
it's broken,
website's
bro.
broken. It's not up.
So,
it's always broken.
I do get your point.
But anyway, you get my point.
The one thing that I wanted to add to this is that I've lost my train of thought. The PDGA being broken broke my brain. I'll find it. I'll come back to it.
Charlie, you have a very, very susceptible brain to being broken. If the PDGA website and the PDGA being broken can break your brain, it's like a red, self-destruct button on the back of your
somehow
head.
you clip the right wire. I'm good. I'm back. The thing that I wanted to say is that when you have holes where no one's birdieing, right? So you look at the scoring distribution. It's 50% par. Think about who's in the 50%, right? That's basically all of the competitive players in the field, aside from a couple who make an error and take a bogey. So what happens is that you'll get the strong players have a 65-foot look at birdie, and the weak players have a 125-foot look at birdie, and they both take a par, right? And this is the problem.
That's
because
exactly right.
The FPO, it's we have this great hole. Let's just shorten it 100 feet and put a tee pad there. And no one's they're not thinking about it the same way. So anyway, we're going to leave it there.
Yep.
Ella Hansen had a great chance to win and just didn't have that great final round that she needed to have. But man, she has been up there a bunch, and it's just a matter of time, folks. Talk more about Ella in our Rapid React show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about who's trending up and who's trending down as we head over to Europe for the European Open very soon. Stay with us. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Head over to Pound Disc Golf's Facebook page to get all the latest information. The Rufus is in production. That's right. So 10 prototypes deep. Now the Rufus is getting made and pre-orders are going to be available very soon. You can find out more and get the latest and greatest at facebook.com/pounddiscgolf. Welcome back to the Upshot. It is time to see who's trending up and who's trending down right now on tour. Decided to kind of like make an arbitrary cutoff of the beginning of the West Coast swing as kind of like where we can start to assess the trend, and took a look at how players are playing. You can quibble with, how big is a trend? Double G has 2 tournaments in a row where he hasn't played that great, but he also won 2 tournaments just a little bit ago. So what are you going to do with that? Mostly we're looking holistically at the broad strokes of the stretch of the tour since Masters Cup. So let's dive in. Josh, I'll let you take the first one. Who's trending in the right direction? Let's start with the positives.
All right. In the right direction, I think the most obvious one is Katrina Allen. Taking the win here, I think, we had been discussing where's Katrina Allen at. You've been picking Katrina Allen for a while, feeling like she's due. And I really feel like Katrina she's now first in the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings, as you mentioned. OTB, little lackluster for her in 9th place, but then, which is not included. Isn't that incredible? Her 9th place finish is not included in her calculations because it's too low relative to the rest of them. But then 3rd at Portland, 4th Preserve, 4th at the Major, 1st Idlewild. Getting the win, I think, is what really pushes her up and over, because podium finishes are great and all, but we've needed to see Katrina get another win in order to keep her relevant in terms of that discussion of, who's at the top. And I think that win meant that it really did finish pushing her in a good West Coast pre-Europe swing.
All right. Now, I promised earlier that I would tell you why you don't need to be worried about Gannon Buhr. He's still trending in the right direction, folks. Let me give you this fact right now. This is not specific to just the stretch since Masters Cup, but still. He has finished top 10 at 9 of the 10 Elite Series and Majors this season. That's the most of anybody. No one has more. And if you look at what he's been doing lately, well, he won the Masters Cup, and then he has a couple 4th place finishes. He hasn't missed the top 10 in this entire stretch. His worst finish was 10th at Beaver State Flint. And yes, he faltered in the final round of Idlewild, but I thought she'd made a great case as to why, in some ways, it was bad bounces as much as it was some mistakes. So at the end of the day, I don't think you need to be worried at all about this kid. He's in 3rd place in the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings. He's still a teenager. He just graduated high school. We're talking wonderkind, folks, and he's been trending in the right direction all season long, but you got to feel good about his play lately, because simply getting the win at the Silver Series is enough to kind of put him at the top of this list.
My next trending up is Kyle Klein. Kyle Klein had a couple good Silver Series, but other than those Silver Series, his best finish was a 13th at DDO, and then besides Waco, finished outside the top 20 at 4 other DGPT events prior to the West Coast swing. West Coast swing hasn't missed the top 20. 19th at OTB, 17th at Portland, 14th at Beaver State, 3rd at Preserve, 3rd at Idlewild. You can see the trajectory. You can see it going in the right direction, and it's timed similarly to last year as well. Kyle Klein really benefits from some of these courses. He plays well at them. I think he's going to be a real threat to win D-Glow, which I'm still not convinced of how many people are going to come play that tournament, given it's the weekend after European Open. And I and Kyle is not going to the European Open, which means I think D-Glow, and tons of players are registered. I just don't buy it. I don't believe you. Anyone
they are
now,
allowed to. They're allowed to withdraw like up to pretty close to the event with no penalty as part of being a tour pass holder. So I think you're probably right that some folks are going to try. I mean, if I was over in Europe, I'd be like, man, I'm going to move my flight. Like, I'm going to hang out for a couple weeks.
Well, even if you don't, like, if you finish Sunday, fly out Monday, the jet lag, I don't know. Anyway,
I get you.
Long story short, anyone who's registered for European Open right now, who is also registered for D-Glow, I think you're liars. We'll see how true that is. But Kyle Klein, I think, then is going to really benefit from a field that is not quite as strong for D-Glow, and he's definitely going in the right direction.
All right, I'm going to talk about Missy Gannon. Missy Gannon has really been stepping up to play as of late. Obviously, gets the podium finish this weekend. I picked her. Thank you for the point. Much appreciated, Missy. And, you know, she's got 2 second-place finishes in the last 3 events. Top 10 at the major. She hasn't missed the top 10 at all in this stretch. And I just feel like overall we've seen her reach a little bit higher level of consistency that wasn't totally there earlier this year. She's obviously been good this season, but to get a couple of second place finishes in quick succession, I think is a really good sign for where her game is at. And, you know, I won't be surprised to see her get another win on tour this year. I think she could do it. I think she was in the mix this weekend. So, yeah, Missy Gannon, killing it.
I have another player who just reminds me of Missy in a lot of ways, Owen Scoggins. And what's impressive to me about Owen trending in the right direction is that prior to the West Coast swing, she went, you know, take out LVC. That doesn't count for Owen. I don't know why she plays that tournament. But then Waco 4th, Open at Belton 7th, Texas State's 5th, Champions Cup 4th, right? Really good slate. Like that's a good start. And then you go OTB Open 7th. Why are you playing that one, Owen? It's like LVC. But then 2nd Portland, 3rd Beaver State Fling, 16th at Preserve, not a great finish, but 3rd at the Major and 2nd at Idlewild. So she took a 4th to 5th average place finish and elevated it to a 2nd to 3rd place average finish. Owen has got it. She's going to win a tournament this year. It may just be a silver series, but she's going to get a first.
Okay, over on
Actually,
Josh.
hold on.
Put it on the books.
I'm not going to put it on the books, and the only reason why is because she's only registered for 2 events moving forward.
Oh, interesting.
So she's registered for D-Glow and Ledgestone, but then according to UDisc, which is not always accurate, she is not registered for any other event afterwards on UDisc. So I'm going to pump the brakes just a little bit on that because I don't know what events she's going to play. And
she's playing D-Glow. Masters Worlds, D-Glow, Ledgestone, U.S. Masters, and she is registered for Throw Pink. Keep in mind that the Disc Golf Pro Tour final 2 events, GMC and MVP, are not open for registration because they're playoff events.
Oh, got it. Okay, yeah.
So
I think I can confidently say that Owen is going to win a Masters event.
We'll give you that one. I'm not going to put a line on that one. How about Simon Lizotte? I mean, I know it feels like he's cooled off a little bit from how hot he was when he won back-to-back tournaments. But at the end of the day, when you look at the overall stretch of play since Masters Cup, like, it's just been phenomenal. I mean, we just haven't seen this level of play from Simon in many years at this point. Mm-hmm. But just to kind of recap, after the 2nd at DDO, which isn't even included in this, right? He goes first at OTB Portland, and then he's 3rd at the Preserve. He basically just had a kind of a not great Idlewild, just 22nd. Okay. I mean, the guy is clearly trending in maybe the most right direction, which is back to the top of the podium. So Simon continuing to have it's kind of a storybook season. It's been awesome.
Yeah. My next trending upward is Maria Oliva. And she has had, I think, there's 2 things that give me that. The number one, she's not finishing as low as she was early season. 33rd Jonesboro, 23rd DDO. She's not finished outside the top 20 since the OTB Open, the stretch that we're talking about. And the second thing is that she was in contention at the major. She was in discussion for a lot of the major. And those are the 2 criteria that I think have elevated Maria's profile from just being a oh yeah, she finishes inside the top 5 and is playing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, she looked so fantastic at times at U.S. Women's. Great, it's a great one. Okay, Adam Hammes, absolutely trending in the right direction. I mean, it's been a bit of an up and down season for him, or more just down and then now like back up. So he had like the lone. His only top 10 at an elite series was back at LVC, where he was 7th. And then since we got over to the West Coast swing, he's got 3 top 10 finishes. Portland, he was 5th. Preserve, he was 6th. Idlewild, he was 9th. Now, there's still been a little bit of ups and downs, 20th at Beaver State, 33rd at OTB in that same stretch. But overall, we're starting to see Adam show us what he showed us last year, which was consistent top 10 quality disc golf. And I think that's a big step forward from where he's been this season, which is sort of not relevant.
My last trending upward is Ella Hansen. Ella Hansen has been in the mix for a couple of events recently. This is where we saw her start to take off as well. OTB, Portland, and Idlewild, obviously, like we've talked about, as well as the Preserve. Just lots of really good play from Ella lately. Fun fact, she has 6 top 10 Elite Series and Major finishes this year, which is tied with Tatar for 4th most, only behind Allen, Pierce, Gannon, Mondahano, and Scoggins. So what great company to be holding, because we've talked, it's interesting to decide where you put Ella Hansen in your discussion, because you have a group behind her of Maria Oliva, Holland Handley, other players, I would say the Europeans even, right? And then based on their performance just this year in just a single window, Ella kind of is in between the two. She's riding the line of, oh yeah, in the conversation could win an Elite Series, or, oh, she's a really good player who we're seeing improve a lot. And I think this number kind of, depending on what stat you look at, this one and her finishes have kind of grouped her with the top group, and that's a nice place to be. I do have an honorable mention for you, Charlie.
Okay.
There have been 5 FPO players who have been in the top 10 at every DGPT Elite Series since OTB. Paige, Katrina, Missy, Own, and can you guess who the 5th one is?
Ella. I mean, but I know that's not the right answer.
Nope. 12th of Portland keeps her outside of this. Juliana Korver.
Oh,
Every
JK.
DGPT Elite Series event that she has played at this season, she's been in the top 10. The reason we don't put her in the trending upwards is because she didn't play before Masters Cup. So she has no results before then. So, I mean, I guess she's trending up from nothing. But, besides the blemish at the major, we're looking, if you're just looking at Elite Series, 3rd, 9th, 7th, 9th. So.
What a beast.
She's so cool.
That's amazing. All right. We're going to the dark side, folks. We're betting on 7. Who's trending in the wrong direction? We got to start with Calvin Heimberg. And I think Calvin did the right thing, which was say, you know what? I'm going to take Idlewild off. I'm going to get over to Europe. I'm going to take a little bit of a mental break, and off we go. And the thing is, he finished 2nd at OTB. But since then, 12th at Portland, 49th at Beaver State, 11th at the Preserve, skipped a match play. We didn't even mention the match play for Owen Scoggins, by the way.
True.
Just hasn't looked quite right. And basically has acknowledged himself that he hasn't felt great. He hasn't felt good about his game, right? He skipped match play because of that. And I think, I don't think this is like the sky's falling situation for Calvin, but I do think he's clearly not quite right and has been trending the wrong way.
My top trending down is Kona Panis. Kona came into the season with very, very high expectations that she really, was not living up to, but had a couple finishes in the top 10. 10th at Texas State's, 4th at Open at Tallahassee, 8th at Champions Cup. And we said, maybe that's the time. Maybe that's her window that she needed to adjust to the bag. Well, folks, not only is it not better, it's gotten significantly worse. OTB Open 13th, Portland 17th, Preserve 28th, the Major 39th, and Idlewild 42nd. Just straight
That's
wrong
straight
direction.
Brutal 42nd.
Yeah. It's not good, folks. I don't have much else to say. It's not only was it not good to start, it's not getting better, it's going the opposite direction. Like the wheels have fully come off the bus at this point.
I mean, Kona is not currently qualified for the Pro Tour Championship. She's 22nd.
Like the play-in spot.
That's right.
Yes. She's
spot.
outside the play-in spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand, like, what happened to Idlewild. I'm looking at the stats real quick. I mean, honestly, I know it's boring. I know you don't want to hear me say it.
Don't say it, Charlie.
It's the putting.
It was her upshots, right?
I mean, the thing is, here's what it is. She had too many holes where she hurt herself off the tee as well, but she was top 10 in Circle 1 in regulation. Like, she was still able to birdie more holes than a lot of players. But just, 53% Circle 1X putting, and like holes where she put herself out of position off the tee. Anyway, it's not good. The next one I'm going to go with, trending in the wrong direction, Kat Murch. Now, obviously, Kat Murch has had a really nice season, and even has a couple top 10s in this stretch, but starting to like show some cracks a little bit. Wasn't really in the mix at all at U.S. Women's. Had a 19th place finish at Idlewild this weekend, which I think is her worst of the season. Yes, it is. Which is a good sign, right? She's having a good season, but she's been going away from the kind of play we saw from her earlier in the year, where she looked like she might win a tournament. She has a couple of top, like up at the top, right? She's third at Jonesboro. But since then, we just really haven't seen that. She does have the 7th at Portland, but the play has not been as sharp.
My next trending downward is Drew Gibson. It's funny because if you look at Drew Gibson's season, he took that big stretch off after LVC. If you look at Drew Gibson cutting off LVC, his season looks exactly like you'd expect from Drew Gibson. A couple top 10s, including at the top 10 at the major, and then some 15s, some 20s, some 30s, right? It's kind of what you'd expect. Maybe a little bit underperforming. The problem is he sets himself up with just by teeing off a nice win at LVC, and everyone's like, "Ooh, okay, hey Drew, we see
nowhere to go but down."
That's right. And boy, has he 53rd at Idlewild is his worst finish of the season. But like I said, 32nd at Portland. A OTB was a 7th place. Not bad for OTB, but just he's not cutting it right now.
Well, here's the thing I'm concerned about, okay? He was 3rd at Idlewild last year. And where did he finish this weekend?
53rd.
53rd. Like, that's not a good sign.
That's bad.
Right? So, like, the same exact course. Now, and we talked about this in our React show. He was out on social media complaining about the course conditions and playing in the bad conditions in round 1. To me, it's a sign of like lack of mental strength to be going on social media to complain about the muddy course. I'm sorry. So I think at the end of the day, like, Drew is obviously incredibly gifted at the game of disc golf, but it just seems to come and go. He's very streaky. He'll play amazing for a stretch of time, and then, but like he really hasn't been that good, and he's been trending the wrong way. There's just no question about it, Josh.
Yep.
All right, my next one on the list, Nico Locastro. Nico kind of got off to a pretty good start. I mean, top 10 at Waco, a couple of 4th place finishes on the Silver Series, and since then it's slowed down a little bit. It hasn't been terrible, but just also hasn't been great. And no top 10 finishes since Music City. 16th at OTB.
Top 15.
Couple of 20s at 30th place this weekend at Idlewild. Like, it's not a disaster. Not, for the player that Nico is, I don't think it's a disaster, but he's been going away from what we saw from him at the beginning of the year. And so, yeah, trending in the wrong direction.
I'm going to round out our MPO in trending in the wrong direction with one that I think could be a little bit controversial, but I don't know. Paul McBeth. He is obviously not trending in the right direction. And even though this season has been a little bit weird, I mean, number one, he started off the year incredibly hot, like we talked about, the win at the Waco, but as well as shooting just some incredible rounds. And then Champions Cup, he shoots that just insane 16 under, and we're like, oh, Paul McBeth's fine, right? He had a bad round, but it'll be okay. The problem is, though, that's become the storyline of the season. And this stretch, DDO 51st, bad finish for Paul McBeth. But it's the only finish outside the top 10 until you get to OTB, at which point this stretch has been 19th, 5th, 14th, 9th, and 6th. So he hasn't broken, besides the one top 5 finish inside the top 5, and has 2 of them outside the top 10 now, as well as starting Idlewild outside the top 20. This is not the right direction for McBeth. And maybe it's not a drastic slide. Maybe it's just a couple degrees, but it is going in the wrong direction, in my opinion, from this last stretch.
Are people ready to face the facts that Chris Dickerson is the best player at Discraft? Like that spice right there? Has Chris Dickerson...
Give me some milk, guys. That was a hot take.
Chris Dickerson has now passed Paul McBeth in the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings.
Despite not playing.
Right. Chris Dickerson has the major win in MPO this year. Uh-huh. Chris Dickerson has finished ahead of McBeth at tournaments that they've both played at. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 6 times this season at which they've both played. So by the clear mathematics of the situation, Chris is the better player.
I want justice for Chris. 10-year, $10 million contract tomorrow, Discraft.
Pay the man.
And if it doesn't come in the trunk of a McLaren, I'm going to be pissed.
All right. My next one, Kristen Tatar. Now, look, when you set this, someone McBeth, right? When you set the bar so high that finishing like 6th is bad, this is what happens to you. But I'm just a little worried about Kristen Tatar. Her elbow is not doing well. She had to withdraw from a tournament last weekend over in Europe. She tried to play, but had her elbow swell up. Probably shouldn't have played. Was already dealing with it, had been wearing a sleeve. Clearly isn't right. And also just hasn't been playing as well as an obvious result of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about her ability to go and play at European Open. And if she does play, I'm concerned about her ability to compete at a high level. Same thing with Eagle. And I know it's been one of the stories, subplots of this season, the injuries. It's been a problem. And I mean, obviously, I want Kristen to get well as soon as possible because it's great to have her in the field, and it's been a real bummer not to have her out on tour. But you can't deny that she's going in the wrong direction after just a brilliant start to the year.
Yeah, my last trending in the wrong direction isn't quite trending in the wrong direction. It's one more to say, keep an eye on. That's Paige Pierce. Paige had the 6th place at Waco, whatever. Paige doesn't play well at Waco, and we know it. But, she has 2 wins up until OTB, and then OTB she wins another one and wins Preserve. So she's not, her level of high or ceiling is not changed, right? She's still winning. She won the same number of events in both stretches of the tour so far. The problem is that she also has a 21st and a 10th place, which is her worst finish of the season, both of them. And Jonesboro tied for 7th is the next closest. So it's not to say that Paige is trending in the wrong direction because, she's still got the wins to buoy her up and is still making a very compelling player of the year case. But to see Paige have 2 tournaments where she's 10th or worse, it is a little bit of an oddity, especially when one of those is a major. and a major that last year she won on different courses, of course, handedly. So not the ideal past couple tournaments for Paige, but I mean, I'm not probably going to pick her for my top 3 at Europe. That's for sure. So.
All right. So before we wrap up today, just wanted to quickly dive into some listener emails about their spectator experience at Idlewild. It's been so fantastic getting these. I think it's great feedback for the tournament organizers, to be honest, and it's great to kind of get a sense of what it's like on the ground. So let's take a quick look. Alexander writes in and says that the Woods Golf spectator areas were a major improvement over last year's chaos. I think we're seeing that, right? It takes probably 2 or 3 years for venues to kind of figure out how they should operate to manage the crowds that are coming. Permanent ropes marked off spectator areas on the sides of the fairway, which kept the fairways clear. The areas were well placed, and I never saw discs fly into them. So kudos to the Idlewild folks for that. There were paths through the woods for navigation. So that's nice to hear. Audi also adds that they've been going to Idlewild every year since 2017, and they can confidently say it's gotten better for spectators every year. This year proved to me, says Audi, that Woods Golf can stay on tour. They've cleared out wide trails in the rough on the side of the fairway on about 50% of the wooded holes that are purely for spectators. Holes like 12 were previously very hard to watch from the rough, now have multiple viewing areas starting at the tee box and continuing down most of the fairway. This is exactly what we've been talking about, Josh.
Mm-hmm. It's great feedback to hear that it's happening. Alexander adds one negative, though, that I think is actually, you could say is no big deal. It's just one little hiccup, but I actually think is kind of one of the most severe problems you can have as a tournament organizer when it comes to spectator viewing. He says that you couldn't watch a card finish hole 18 because after 17, you had to walk all the way around the property basically to get over to the hole 18 spectator area. That's a real problem. Like imagine if Worlds, everyone following hole 17 then didn't watch 18 happen. How mad would those spectators be? They wouldn't spend another dime on Disc Golf Pro Tour if they missed hole 18 because of that, right? That is a really, really serious problem, especially on a course that has opportunities to create drama on both 17 and 18. If one of those was irrelevant, if you had like really exciting hole 16, 17, really exciting hole 18, then that's different. But when you have really exciting hole 17, hole 18, for them not to be able to watch both holes, I think is actually a very, very serious problem that is an absolute you cannot do at a Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Yeah, it's an interesting problem to solve because of where 18 is. You got to cut like across another fairway, and you're like, it's not ideal. But I mean, apparently VIPs couldn't even like walk to 18. You know, if you're a general admissions person and you just have to choose whether you're going to sit and watch at 17 or you're going to sit and watch at 18 because you can't walk with the card anyway, maybe it's on you. You have to just choose where you want to sit and watch. But if you're a VIP,
sure.
I would be a little annoyed. I would definitely be a little annoyed. Yeah. Last thought comes from Nathan, who said the highlight of the tournament was the meet and greet and the Uplay clinic. This is an incredible idea, right? Giving opportunities for fans to pay up to meet pros and like chat with them, sign discs, whatever. That's actually a really good organized setting for pros to kind of interact with fans versus like getting accosted by them while they're walking to their car. And then obviously Uplay clinic, like having an opportunity for fans to also like work on their disc golf game with pros who are in town. Come on, this is like no-brainer stuff. And I think it's cool to see that the Pro Tour's kind of going in this direction.
Yeah, Nathan talks a little bit about how kind Haley King was to his daughter and encouraging her, and I think that bringing the youth aspect as well, making it exciting for young players, because when you look at professional sports, it's always the kids who are getting the foul balls and that excitement around that. I think it really does help build some momentum behind the sport, and especially when FPO players are able to interact with young girls, it's a great opportunity.
Josh, I want to let you know that. Nobody has written in to explain why they carry their bag around at a Pro Tour event while they're spectating. So either people aren't actually doing it who listen to the show, we have a cultured, intelligent audience, or people are hiding in shame for the terrible thing that they're doing.
Look, you don't need to hide in shame as long as you promise to never do it again.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for today's edition of the Upshot. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start getting you ready for the European swing on Thursday, so we will look forward to talking with you then. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you on Thursday right here on the Upshot.